Oh man, this video is going to get me into some trouble. Let me first off say, this is not a bad movie. I don't dislike this movie. I think it's fine. I think that it does a lot of stuff well, does some stuff not so well. But I like to call Spider-Man No Way Home Spider-Man Into the Flawed-verse. And I know this movie's been out for a little over a month now. Plenty of people have done their reviews, given their thoughts. And I didn't because I don't want to look at Debbie Downer. But I just got back from seeing Nightmare Alley, the new Guillermo del Toro movie, and that was a masterpiece. That was brilliant. It was fantastic, and it took me back to thinking, why did this movie that I had no emotional connection going into hit me in a way that the movie that's the culmination of everything I've loved since I was 4 years old doesn't have. Spider-Man is my all-time favorite superhero, always has been. Ever since, like I said, being 4, reading the comics, playing the video games, seeing the movies. Like, reading Spider-Man comics is what helped teach me to read. So, yes, I'm going to go through this film bullet point by bullet point, pointing out the good, the bad, and the ugly. My issues with it, things it did well. And, just wait for the internet to crucify me. I'm the second coming of Christ, is really what this actually is. So let's go ahead and start with the crucifixion. First of all, it picks up immediately where the second one left off, which is good. That's a great strength. Spider-Man's identity is revealed. Good start. And this is it immediately leads into something that's just kind of, okay. The crowd is teaming and thronging at MJ, forcing Spider-Man to grab her and go. And this scene is real vapid and fast paced, and it sort of works. It's interesting to see Peter's life upside down and how he reacts to it in the moment, but it's also dominated by Zendaya, however you pronounce it, her abysmal acting skills. The entire time they're web swinging to find a place for her to hide Peter, and her having these frantic conversations about what they should do, and moments like these, I get annoyed that people talk about, Hayden Christensen being a wooden actor, because compared to Zendaya, he's freaking Shakespeare. Her lack of conviction and delivery just takes me out of all urgency for this scene from the moment they swing out. So, the scene as a whole might be good, but she really drives it down to where, it's just sort of okay, But that immediately leads to a bad scene, and it was when I saw the scene in the theaters, I was like, oh, this is the kind of film it's going to be. So, they use the sewers to make it back to Peter's apartment, and immediately there are two glaring issues in this one scene. First, they come through the window, leading to, Happy finding MJ helping Peter, take his suit off, which of course is a misunderstanding of a sex joke. That's issue number one, the humor. The humor in this movie falls apart at almost every single time. Spider-Man is a funny character. He's always been a witty character, but he has never been MCU funny. And the MCU style humor is just all over the place in this movie, and it almost never lands. I will admit when it does, there are some genuinely funny moments, but for the majority of the time, no, it doesn't. And this is the beginning of that. This is where the issue starts. So some dialogue happens, and it's revealed that Spider-Man's identity is out. With Peter showing May and Happy, there are at least 4. I mean, I counted in the theater. Granted, it's been a while since I saw it. I saw it opening day, but 4 choppers outside their apartment. And I mean, right outside the apartment. This is an issue for me. I don't know how many of you guys have been around helicopters, that are in very close proximity. You can hear a helicopter through your apartment or house while you're playing video games. Who knows how many hundreds of feet away. These things, 4 of them, 30 feet outside the apartment. How did they not hear this? They are stupid loud. So you got 4 outside the apartment, and they should have all been able to hear it, completely even drowning out the conversation they're having. Moments with reveals like these remind me that I'm watching a movie, so it breaks immersion. I'm not sucked in. I'm not invested because I'm like, all right, yeah, movie logic. We can continue. So again, it's a superhero movie. There's gonna be a lot of suspension of disbelief, but I don't know. This was too much. Super villains coming from alternate dimensions I can take, but 4 helicopters outside your apartment, fuck that. And then we get to what is, a good scene, like a genuinely good scene. So damage control bursts in, arrests all of them, which is interesting. Like, we've never really gotten to be told what damage control's jurisdiction or powers are. Like, can they arrest people? Obviously they can, it was in the movie, but that just kind of comes out of left field. I don't have an issue with that. This kind of just, while for the most part this is scripted, that just kind of popped into my head. I'm like, what is damage control's, reach law-wise? Anyway, so they burst in, arrest them. We get the interrogation scene, and it's fine. Like, it feels kind of unnecessary because of the next scene. You got your standard interrogation cliche that's, again, I think it's supposed to be funny, but the humor of this movie just falls fucking flat. And the scene, if the scene stopped here, it would have been more or less harmless. Like, maybe even a good scene, because we have to, as an audience, worry about what this means. Like, oh, what's gonna happen? Aunt May could lose her rights to Peter. Peter's friends could go to prison. They're all fucked, and it's all his fault. And nope. 4 minutes later, Matt Murdock shows up. He's like, nah, you're good, Pete. Don't even worry. Happy, you're fucked. Why is Peter good now? Like, don't know. Why did Matt, or what did Matt do or say to prove that Peter and his friends and family are good now? No idea. You can't just try to have us care about your character's plight and worry for their futures and well-being, only to have it completely and utterly saved by a cameo 4 minutes later. Even if it's the best cameo in the movie, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing cameo, but it also sucked all tension out of what would have been an amazing scene. So aside from a tad bit of bad at the end, or a tad bit of good at the end, I should say, which is, the cameo, the scene as a whole, it's bad. Not a good scene, but also a good scene. Again, that was kind of a mixed bag. So, we'll see where we have to go from there. Excuse me, sorry. Now we have a genuinely good scene. Let me wet my whistle a little bit to talk about it. You'll appreciate my Carnage shirt. That's how you know I'm an OG fan. Favorite supervillain of all time. Joker can suck a dick. Carnage, better than Joker every time. Anyway, from here, we've got a lot of nothing special and pointless humor that just leads up to one of the best moments of the movie, which is so hilarious to think about. So we, see Pete moving into Happy's place, and they go to school, and people are divided, and I know it's supposed to be emotional. Some are like, we support you, Spider-Man. And others are like, go to fucking hell, Spider-Man, you're a piece of shit. And which is what you get a lot of in the comics. And this is the first time we really get to see it in these new Tom Holland movies, but we also only get to see glimpses of it for a few seconds, so it doesn't really stick or linger with you. I don't know, what's the old phrase for films? Show, don't tell. So, but I said this is a good scene. I'm getting to that. But instead, we do get told up on the roof about how hard it is when MJ and Peter are up, and, they make a big deal of how they can't go anywhere without media attention from their peers. How the fuck did they get to the roof unnoticed? Like, you could argue that Peter's Spider-Man, so he could do it. Stealth his way up there. Stealth is a huge part of, like, Spider-Man video games and stuff like that, certain scenes. But what about MJ and Ned? I mean, the school knows that's his girlfriend and his best friend. They'd be followed just as much, so he wouldn't even get privacy up there. So yeah, we get to the roof where another annoying thing happens. From an audience perspective, Ned just seems left out. Like, I mean, obviously he's physically there, but the movie tries to make jokes about how he's, interrupting MJ and Peter's private time in a way that makes it look like Pete is sidelining him. And this is where we're going to get to my first comparison, and honestly, I will have very few, but there is going to be one or two to the Raimi films. MJ, Harry, and Peter always felt like a trio. Never like one was more important to the group dynamic than the other. Whereas here, it seems like they want MJ to be more important, and Ned is treated like a pest or a joke for the script. And while I got nothing from any of this, like I said, I've been ragging on the scene I said was good. Then something awesome happens. Their MIT acceptance letters. They're all rejected because of their ties with Spider-Man. This is brilliant. This shows Spider-Man's effect on their lives as a whole, and how it fucked up just by, how they're fucked just by knowing him. The higher-ups of the school effectively cancel these kids because they're afraid of controversy, rather than looking at these kids and for their grades, abilities, extracurriculars, looking at them as individuals, etc., etc., etc. That's so great and real. Like, that's real life. Being judged and taken advantage of and denied, and, like, I don't know if this is, like, something you guys have ever had happen to you, but, maybe denied for a job, or denied a friendship, or denied even, like, an invitation to a family gathering, just because of the people you associate with, even if they're not going to be at some function or family gathering or whatever. I don't know, it's realistic. I liked that. It shows real-world consequences that are unfair and, more importantly, unwarranted. So because of that alone, I will say this scene works, despite earlier parts of the scene being, in my opinion, an utter failure. Yeah, I'd still call this one good. So, then, of course, Peter goes to Doctor Strange. Have him do the memory spell. Well, we all know what that means. This scene more or less works. There aren't many issues with it. Humor, once again, dumb, doesn't land, but the results are what we expect from Spider-Man's story. I will say, if Wong is the new Sorcerer Supreme, I think this is a glaring plot hole. Surely he would know what's going on, that the spell got fucked up, and, have to do something to fix it. Him being out of sight, out of mind in this movie, when all these issues are because of magic, and, he's the Sorcerer Supreme, doesn't make sense, but whatever, for this particular scene, him stepping away and letting Strange do his thing makes sense. However, here's where things get, for lack of a better term, contrived. So, Peter goes to speak with the admissions gal, and Doc Ock shows up. Pretty good fight scene ensues, witty banter. It feels like Spider-Man. Like, it feels like a Spider-Man scene. Not just a film scene, it feels like something out of the comics. So, he's saving folks, he's talking shit, he's doing acrobatics. It works. Mostly. Why is Doc Ock there, though? Like New York is massive. So what are the odds he'd appear right in front of Peter? And Peter, he doesn't know it that. Why is he just under a random bridge by an airport destroying cars for no reason? Peter isn't even in his suit yet. He's in... Well, he's in a suit, but not... You know what I mean, not in his suit. Anyway, so Doc Ock just throwing cars out of the way, being a dick for no reason. And I know there needs to be a conflict. I know we need action scenes. But this one comes out of the blue. And the odds of it happening are, like, so low. Even lower when you see at the end of the fight, the Goblin appears. Now, what are the odds that he is in the same area as these two? The scene relies on plot conveniences that, while visually entertaining for the viewer, it does lead to some issues. And if you don't question it, I guess good for you, but I very much did. He's in the same area as these two, and this flimsy, poor writing on the narrative side. I will say, the nanotech bonding with Ock's arms, that's cool. It's a unique idea for the writing, so props there, but this scene's a mixed bag. Gets a resounding A-OK. And also, this just popped into my head while going over this. If these two showed up at the same time, you can make the argument, they're just drawn to Spider-Man. Alright, there's 3 other villains, why weren't they drawn to Spider-Man? Like, this one doesn't work. I'm sorry, it doesn't. So yeah, right as the Goblin shows up, they're warped back to Strange's basement. We get this cool reveal that he's captured the Lizard, and, Strange even looks like battle damage. Like he and the Lizard fought. I feel like we were robbed here. This is what I would like to call a missed opportunity. So, rather than Spider-Man and Doc Ock being one static scene, we could have gotten a scene that swapped back and forth between Spidey and Ock and the light, and Doctor Strange and the Lizard in the dark, cramped, wet sewer corridors. And we get Strange fight the iconic Spider-Man villain, For a movie that just threw fan service all over the screen, I feel like this was a legitimate missed opportunity. Either way, we get the reveal, Spidey villains from the multiverse, and, the crew needs to rein them in. The scene's fine, but it could have been excellent. And here, we get the first time I've said it in a while, but a good scene. Like a genuinely good scene. We get the fight with Electro, and the lead up to that. Now, the imagery of Spider-Man swinging through the forest is... oh, it's amazing. Like, I'm not sure if intentionally or not harkens back to the end of the Spider-Verse, but I loved the visuals here. The low-setting sun, the silhouette swinging, the vast expanse of the forest, and the confrontation where the magic just phases through and now appeared Electro. Not only that, but Sandman comes in and helps Peter, which is perfect because in Spider-Man, and then Sandman's ending in Spider-Man 3. I also like where Sandman thinks a Spider-Man he knows isn't his Spider-Man zaps Electro and sends him away, scares Flint into attacking, forcing Peter to magic trap him as well. This scene's fantastic overall. It does maybe beg the question that if Sandman came back more or less good, why didn't Doc Ock? But whatever, the scene is fantastic. But of course, we would have such a fantastic scene followed up by something that makes, Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movie look like the writing from Memoirs of a Geisha. Fuck, I hate this next part. Alright. Major writing flaw. The Lizard talks to Electro, saying, I remember you used to be a loser. I'm paraphrasing, but I remember you used to be, loser, ugly, fucked up teeth, yada yada. Almost every single villain is perfectly in character in this film from when they last were seen. Except Electro. In this movie, he's calm, collected, calculating, he has a plan. He's supposed to be the Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and while those movies were garbage, and while he was written poorly, he was a socially awkward mess who only wanted to be bad for recognition from Spider-Man. And this is a complete overhaul of his character. The reason that's bad is because he effectively came to this universe mere seconds after, his stint in Amazing Spider-Man. Nothing would make his character just 180 like that. All these characters are the exact same as what they were prior. So why is this character inherently different? Going through this fucking temporal loop or whatever shouldn't have rebooted his character. It didn't anybody else. They did this, obviously, because they knew Electro was poorly written and fucking dumb in the previous movie. But now you created this plot hole of it feels like an entirely different character, despite the fact that it isn't. It's an egregious fail. And I genuinely don't know what they were thinking. Now, this next part is going to be very long-winded and contrived. Long-winded on my part, contrived on the movie's part. And, I fucking hate this next scene. It is one of the worst scenes in the movie for me. So strap in and hate me, kiddos, because holy fuck, you're about to get near full. So we now have Osborn at Feast. Having reclaimed himself temporarily, Aunt May tells Peter to help him, which Peter's reluctant to do. I hate this. I know what the movie's doing. It's trying to teach Peter about responsibility. Here's the problem. Peter already knows. Here's where we really get to what's bad about this film. The reoccurring theme of responsibility. Since it's Spider-Man, you'd think that would be a good theme. But it's not. Here's why. This Peter has already learned in the previous shitty movies. Granted they were shitty, but he still learned it. So let's break it down. Civil War. When he's literally very first introduced, Tony approaches him and asks why he does what he does. Peter implies he's already failed once with Uncle Ben and learns about great power, great responsibility with the line, I would love to play football, but I couldn't before, so I can't now, because I'm different. When you can do the things I can do, and you don't, when the bad things happen, they happen because of you. That's a very long-winded version of with great power comes great responsibility. And this line alone, right there, proves Peter has already had his great power moment. He says it himself. He's been Spider-Man for 6 months at this point. Then, Homecoming. And while this movie is a bad Spider-Man movie, I mean, this is just a fucking awful Spider-Man movie, it at least does have a message. Doing what's right, even if the odds are stacked against you. Peter loses his suit and is sidelined by Iron Man, but he still goes after the Vulture in his crappy homemade suit because it's his responsibility. He knows this, further implying he's already learned the lesson. Then, Far From Home, the literal worst Spider-Man movie ever made, aside from maybe Amazing Spider-Man 2, I'm up in the air as to which is worse. He learns the lesson of responsibility fucking again. When throughout the movie he doesn't want it and is just jumping the chance to push that responsibility off onto Quentin Beck so that he doesn't have to. And where does it lead to? Quentin Beck fucking everything up because he was the bad guy. And if Peter hadn't been trying to dodge responsibility, none of the bad shit would have fucking happened in the first place. So we have clear-cut examples of while Peter is young and experienced, he at least still holds the idea of responsibility to a high regard. So having him learn this lesson throughout the whole film is fucking pointless. That said, we do get another good scene after that. So, there's that at least. Osborn goes with Peter back to Strange's basement, where Strange then proceeds to do the spell to send them back. And then that's when Peter finds out that they all die if that happens. Now, Peter does an actual Spider-Man thing and goes against Strange because he wants to save these people. Granted, the way he gets there is because of Aunt May, and that's fucking stupid, but you know what? He's there, so at least that's good. We have an awesome scene with Strange fighting Spider-Man that eventually leads to the mirror dimension. And here we got like my one laugh out loud moment in this whole movie. Hey, Strange, math is cool. Wanna know what's cooler? Math! Like, this was not only funny, but this was in character funny. Spider-Man recognizing magic as math and using this as a way to beat Strange was clever in characters. Finally showcases how smart Peter actually is. People forget he's supposed to be a literal fucking genius. The quip was funny, the scene was dynamic, chaotic, visually awesome, showcased Peter's resolve. Leaving Strange hung up in the mirror dimension was awesome. Granted, it harkens back to my issue. Why didn't Wong save him? He's the Sorcerer Supreme. He's supposed to monitor magic and make sure shit doesn't go awry. Another big-ass plot hole, but whatever. Oh, why is Wong not care? Fuck it. So, this is one of the few instances here where a small plot hole doesn't ruin the scene, because as a whole, this has Spider-Man written all over it. This scene was fantastic. Which immediately leads to a scene that ends in a resounding... Okay, so Spider-Man takes the villains to Happy's apartment, and this scene really works, and it works, and it doesn't when it doesn't. Holy shit. So this is a difficult scene to talk about, so just bear with me. Seeing Norman Osborn as the scientist who loves science and is giddy to be doing science alongside this version of Spider-Man is awesome. They cure Otto. It's great. His moment of clarity talking about the voice in his head being gone was literally artistic. One of the strongest character moments in the film that only works because Alfred Molina as an actor sells it so well. Conversely, you have Electro being shady and convincing Sandman that maybe this isn't a good idea. I have issues with this because, again, it's out of character from the Electro we had in the previous movie where he appears, and since it's supposed to be the same character, anyway, then you've got the Goblin take back over and convince the villains to be villains. Again, this works for me, but then Electro zaps Doc Ock and says, "I let you better before." And Doc Ock runs on electricity. I thought he fried that, and Doc Ock was going to revert. No. Just zaps him, throws him out of a building. He doesn't show back up until the very end of the movie, still a fucking good guy. What was Ock doing this whole time? He's already at the bottom of the street from being thrown out a window. Why isn't he there to help, save May from the Goblin? I know for the emotion they're going for in the upcoming scene, this would make sense, but it's still a glaring issue in the overall fucking narrative. Ock gets forgotten about so we can have some emotional scenes and have the new Spider-Man come in, which... I love seeing them, but not necessarily at the cost of plot holes. Also, Lizard isn't here. He's chilling in the car, and he seemed all on board to get cured, so why did he break out and run off when stuff goes sideways when he has no idea what's going on because he wasn't fucking there. Like, he's still a scientist. He still retains his intelligence. It seems more like a way for the writers to get him out of the way than it does a rational decision that Dr. Connors would actually make. Fuck, the scene is so weird. But I'm saying it now. This next scene sucks. It is the worst scene in the movie, and all you fucking MCU fanboys who've never read a goddamn comic book can fight me. And while I'll probably lose because I'm kind of a pussy, I'll at least put up the fight. Because this scene sucks. I'm not even just like fanboy, like, oh, I don't like it. Like no, it's bad. And here's why it's bad. Handmaid's death and the classic line, fucking stupid. As mentioned before, he's already learned with great power comes great responsibility. His uncle's fucking dead. He's gone. And it's never addressed. Even the other Peters bring that up later. Well, I guess really only Toby brings it up and Andrew uses what's-her-face. But my point is, it's brought up later. So, Tom Spidey has literally nothing to say about it. No emotion towards it, despite Civil War showing that was definitely a thing. That's just bad writing. It literally at one point even says, with all May has gone through, we know this is an issue for him. So Aunt May's death is beyond forced, both on an emotional level and her writing level. Aunt May and Peter's relationship it's not fleshed out enough for this death to really matter to me as a reviewer. It's way too long. Like, you guys remember Deadpool 2? When Deadpool, dies, and comes back, then dies, comes back, then dies. And it's played for a joke because it's fucking Deadpool. I'm pretty sure that scene was shorter than this one. That's supposed to be done as an actual emotional moment. So it's way too long and played out. It just serves as a tool for Tom to learn a lesson that he's already fucking learned. You shouldn't be learning anything here. You could say, well, hey, he's had a loved one die. Fucking Iron Man died and he had to deal with that. He knows loss. Like, should it hurt? Like, should it make him feel sad in his Spider Kid heart? Yeah, obviously, by all means. You shouldn't be like, Aunt May died, fuck it. But this shouldn't be like his awakening. How do you react when someone you love dies, and what do you do where you go from there? We've already seen him go through that. In literally the previous film. This is a rehash, but worse, it's a double rehash. It rehashes the death of a loved one that we saw in Iron Man, and rehashes the responsibility that several MCU Spider-Man movies have already shown us, plus rehashes stuff from the, I guess it's a triple rehash, because plus rehashes the great, power stuff that the previous Spider-Man films have shown us with Andrew and Toby. So, like, they should have just left it in Civil War that he's already learned the lesson. Getting a headache. I think I'm like halfway done. Ned brings us the other Ned brings us the other Peters, which is dumb. He can do magic out of nowhere now, just using the sling ring, because fat guys have magic, I guess. I don't know, maybe fucking, Bandit Cumberbatch is going to develop an eating disorder the next video, because Fat Thor's out, so now we need Fat Strange. Anyway, Ned brings in the other Peters. It's the worst kept secret in Hollywood. If it wasn't so obvious, maybe I would have felt more emotion, but I didn't. Like, don't get me wrong, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Both Spider-Man felt natural on the screen, and they were there for more than just glorified cameos, which is great. So all in all, I'm happy with how the scene played out. But I'm not gonna dissect the scene too terribly much. It's good. There's no major issues aside from fat kid magic out of nowhere, and the fact that it didn't hit me very hard because everyone knew it was gonna happen. They should have kept this under lock and key. They really, really should have. All right. I'm going to get through this, I promise. It's just, I'm such a big Spider-Man fan. I'm reliving all of this all over again. Oh, I'm angry. I'm angry. I can turn this into a Hulk review. I count as a minority if I'm green. maybe people take my opinion seriously. Anyway, once again, another scene with some good and some bad. The two Peters show up to console Tommy Boy, and this almost works. Toby and Andrew, they give it their all. And frankly, as somebody who has hated Andrew Garfield for so long, I really haven't actually hated Andrew Garfield. I just loathed and still loathe those movies. He himself is actually a good actor. I've seen him in some other stuff. He is a fine actor. He's not really... I think that he plays Spider-Man horribly. Probably not due to his acting chops. Probably due to poor writing and or poor direction. Anyway, they give it their all. They reach Tom. And it's satisfying to see their characters know what it truly means to be Spider-Man. Again, no mention of Uncle Ben from Tom feels kind of fucking ridiculous. Tom not being combative and cynical toward them seems unrealistic. Some Spider-Man just came out of nowhere, and yeah, he's a little combative for like 30 seconds. But he's like, alright, cool, let's go be Spider Bros. Like, no, there should have been some like animosity towards the other Spider-Man. At least, in my opinion, for this to feel realistic. How quickly they set aside their differences to work together feels, to me, it feels rushed. I wish more care had been taken to this scene from Tom's Spider-Man specifically, since the other Spider-Man honestly worked perfect. So, this scene feels like it almost had emotion, but doesn't quite hit the mark. From here, for the most part, the movie starts getting good. Good. The Peters all start working together, develop cures, they banter. The comedy here is finally, at least almost consistently good. It hits and miss. The hits are great. The misses are at least forgettable in their unfunniness. They're not egregious like earlier in the film. So, we get to the climax. If we're being honest, what everybody bought the ticket for. To see three Spider-Men duking it the fuck out with the Sinister 5. I heard they were originally supposed to have Electro in there to make it the Sinister 6, but they just didn't work writing-wise. So anyway, the climax. This mostly works. I love the Peters working together, and working together poorly at first. I mean, they've never... I saw this, like, going in, like, I called this, and I'm so happy they did it, because it would be so easy for them to just be like, they're Spider-Man, they have Spider Sense, they're going to be a fucking amazing team. No. 2 of the 3 have never been on a team before. They don't know how to work as a team. And this is accurate to the 2 other Spider-Men. So, they work together, once they learn how to, it starts going their way. We have funny banter and dialogue, the climax shows its plot holes, and that bothers me because Ned brings Strange back, because again, fat kid circle magic, awesome, but again, where's Wong? All this has been caused by magic. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. He should be here. Honestly, Wong is a horrible Sorcerer Supreme. Just absolutely fucking terrible. Anyway, so why doesn't have anything to do with the magic mishappenings? If I was to guess, either A, bad writing, or B, if I was to be very optimistic, this will be addressed in Multiverse of Madness. If that's the case, I'll rescind all the Wong aspects of this review. But until then, fuck Wong. He's shitty at his job. He's still a Seminole and needs to be protected, and I love him. Protected, and I love him. That's the word. Anyway, so Doc Ock comes back, which is awesome. I love seeing Heroic Ock. Plot the whole time. How'd he get the Statue of Liberty? He's got robot arms, and the Statue of Liberty is quite a swim away from New York City proper. Like, I don't know. I love seeing him show up. I love seeing him be there. I love seeing him be heroic. And the dialogue between him and Toby is like, how are you doing? Trying to do better, sir. That melted my fucking heart. That was literally the closest I'd ever come to crying in that movie. But again, the plot hole's still there. Anyway, so where we're at that, Electro gets beaten. It's revealed that Andrew Garfield, he takes off his mask and shows, and he says the line, which I loved / hated, and I'll explain why. He's like, "I thought Spider-Man would be black." To me, this was teasing Miles Morales. I thought we were gonna get a post-credit scene showing Miles existed in the MCU. That would have been, that would have been great. Like the line was tailor-made to be a setup for that. No, post-credit scene comes. No Miles. Why even bring up Spider-Man being black then? Anyway, Toby gets stabbed. He's just okay, I guess. Like, alright then, why have him get stabbed? Like, if there's going to be no consequences, then why not have him dodge with the spider sense? Where'd his spider sense go? It's in my head canon that he did know the stab was coming. His spider sense did go off, but he knew it was more important to take the hit than to dodge it and show Tom the importance of, not getting revenge. But that's the thing. That's my head canon. We don't actually know. Why have this, if there's not going to be any effect? Also, I know a lot of people loved this part. I fucking hated it. Andrew catching MJ. Look, it was telegraphed, it was obvious. Good idea, terrible execution. Because it was so telegraphed. Every single Spider-Man movie, or at least every single Spider-Man trilogy, has had its variation of the falling girl, the Gwen Stacy moment. So when this one did it, it was obviously the moment that when she fell, Andrew would get the catch to right his wrong of the past. So it actually did happen. I felt zero emotion. Because it was so obvious. This scene's hard because the good stuff is really good. But again, the bad stuff is fucking egregious. Rather than calling this one okay, I'm going to straight up say it is both a bad and good scene. Like, there's no middle ground. Parts of this scene is genuinely great, and I love seeing it. Other parts, sorry, but it's not. It's just not. So, everyone forgets Peter because of the selfless spell, and he gets the shitty apartment. No one remembers him, and rather than him telling MJ and Ned, he recognizes their safety without him and leaves them for their own devices. Way to go, buddy. Goku did it first when he fought fucking Cell and died that way. You're not special. So, I don't know. I find it odd that with no job or no money, he's able to get an apartment in New York City. Like, what about all the camera footage of Peter Parker on the internet? Do people just assume it's fake, or will they see him on the street and be like, yo, you're Spider-Man? Even if they forget Peter Parker, they'll recognize the face is Spider-Man. They still recognize his face when they see it. I don't know, because it's completely selfless and totally in line with the character, but the plot holes are there. They forget Peter Parker, but does the internet footage just go away? Does the fucking message that Quentin Beck left on the internet just go away? Does the YouTube video that Tony showed Peter at the beginning just go away? What's the implication with technology? What happens to his social security number? His fucking high school records? Whatever. It was fine enough. I was called okay because god damn, I love seeing Toby back. And that'll be my justification, I suppose. The final shot of him is in his legit homemade suit. Looks like the comics, and oh, that's good. That was good. I'll give Marvel / Sony, Disney, whoever the fuck their credit there. For the 2.8 seconds we saw that scene, I was 8 years old again. That was good. However, I have to cover one last thing before you all honestly come to my apartment to set it on fire with me and my pregnant fiance in it. I'm joking. She's not actually fucking pregnant. I just thought it would sound a whole lot worse. But still, don't set my apartment on fire because I have cats and 2 birds. Those are like kids, right? So, comic accuracy and inspiration. So at the end of the day, Spider-Man's a comic book first. Yes, there's been video games, there's been movies, there's been various forms of media. There's even been records, believe it or not, like vinyls that are audio book versions of Spider-Man comics. But they're comics first, which means the comics inspire these stories. And of course, they're not going to be carbon copies of these stories, and I don't think anybody wants them to be carbon copies. They just emulate and take ideas and themes from the stories they're based on. The MCU has always done that, so this film is no different. This film borrows from two different storylines. Spider-Verse storyline, which I have the entire run of, and it's a pretty damn good storyline. And One More Day, which, kudos to the film for trying to incorporate themes and ideas from One More Day, because most fans fucking hate that story arc. I'm in the minority. Once again, I should be green. Because I love it. I love the One More Day arc. The problem is, these are two very tonally different story arcs. And using them both in the same film clashes with one another. That might be part of the reason for this film, at least to me, being so lackluster. The Spider-Verse is about a group of beings that hunt Spider-Men from different dimensions. So the Spider-Men from said different dimensions come together to face a threat too big for any one of them to handle on their own. One More Day is about the death of Aunt May due to Spider-Man having his identity revealed, and how far Spider-Man will go to get her back, even breaking his moral code to do so. While this film uses the Spider-Verse idea to foster nostalgia and sell tickets, giving an overall much more lighthearted tone than the comics, the One More Day arc shows Spider-Man, who at this point has been in a happy relationship with Mary Jane for a long time, redon the black suit, and viciously beat and maim his enemies, by the way, to make a deal with the devil and sacrifice his relationship with MJ to get Aunt May back. This film doesn't even give him that. Like, this film, it takes away everyone. Ned, Aunt May, MJ, and on its own, that's fine. I still think it's poorly written, but that's neither here nor there. But it's not on its own. It's still an adaptation. So, when you adapt a story and completely remove the lesson, and the choices, more importantly, that are made to give Peter, that give Peter a fixture of his character, which in this story is how much he loves Mary Jane and Aunt May, in the comics book that one is, it will always, as much as he loves Mary Jane, Aunt May will always come first. That's the moral of One More Day. That's lost here. Jamming these two totally different stories together overall fails to properly adapt either story, which one major fixture in the Spider-Man mythos. One can argue it's adaptation, it doesn't need to be exact, and mostly I actually do agree with that. However, when you stray so far from the source material that the message and lessons are lost, then it is a failed adaptation. Maybe a fine movie, which this one isn't, but maybe a fine movie in other cases, but still a failed adaptation. If I wrote a story where a man has a dog, and a gangster's son kills that dog, is this sounding familiar to you? And the man goes on a revenge crusade, and straight murder fucks everyone to get revenge for that dog, boom, that's a story. Then if a movie comes out based on that same story, but changes the dog to a daughter, and at the end, before the murder fucking of the big bad evil guy is revenge, he decides to forgive him, well, that's a bad adaptation. It still may make an interesting story in its own right, but it's a bad adaptation. Unfortunately, this film just, it fails on both fronts, being a good, strong, cohesive, well-written, movie, and being a well-told adaptation of not one, but two different Spider-Man story arcs. All in all, here's my final thoughts of the movie. The movie is the best Tom Holland movie. That is a given. I fucking hate the other two Tom Holland movies. I don't hate Tom Holland. In fact, I think Devil All the Time is one of my favorite movies of the last 5 years. If you haven't seen The Devil All the Time, that's a much better use of your time appreciating Tom Holland than anything he's ever done fucking Spider-Man related. But anyway, so it's the best Tom Holland movie. Still not exactly good. It's riddled with plot holes, contrivances, humor that doesn't land, rehashes of old ideas we've already seen. Not just in other Spider-Man movies, but literally in other MCU Spider-Man movies. This is the third movie in a trilogy. Trilogy means it's a three-part story. And the first two are awful. I mean, they're bad. Even if this is the best in a trilogy as a whole for the story, it doesn't work. We shouldn't have a movie where Spider-Man learns to be Spider-Man as the third movie in a trilogy called Spider-Man. And also, how much of this is nostalgia? Like, nearly every element of this movie is pulled from previous Spider-Man movies that almost undeniably understood the source material better. Except for Amazing Spider-Man 2. Thankfully, this movie doesn't suffer from, the woke agenda that Marvel's been pushing. Not even pushing, but literally shoving down our throats for the last, at least the beginning of Phase 3. But hitting home with nostalgia and not being, political doesn't inherently make it good. It makes it better than what came before, but not good. What's good in this movie is good. In fact, what's good in this movie is nigh on perfect. But that perfection is nothing but a series of moments in an overall shaky, weak script that relies on nostalgia, unoriginality. Even the idea that Spider-Verse has already been done in a better fucking Spider-Verse movie. Culminating in us finally getting the true comic book version of Spider-Man in the MCU when it shouldn't have taken this long. Spider-Man was introduced in the MCU 6 years ago. We should have gotten Spider-Man 6 years ago, not Iron Man Jr. That's all I've got to say after all this. If you stuck around to the end, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, tell me how wrong I am, tell me how you want to rate my cat Annie. She's fixed, so I guess no harm would really come of it, but it would make my heart sad. And if you want to see me do other controversial subjects, I am trying YouTube again after a 2-year hiatus, but you can talk shit on the other videos I did, which was, talking about why Dragon Ball Z is actually deep and good, and people just don't understand it, and they think, I just think it's mindless screaming, or talk about video game series and then come back from the dead. I also covered the Yellow Flash versus Quartering franchise, if you're a fan of either of those folks. So, yeah, that's about the end of that. This has been Cody Cyberpunk, and you guys have a good rest of your, whatever the fuck it is when you watch this film.